My name is Bradley Berry, and this is the story of my fall.
The phone rang a little before 3 a.m., and it was the call that no parent wants to get, and that was from the Dean of Students saying, there's been an accident, your son's been life flighted to a hospital in Chattanooga, and every emotion went off in my mind. So we drove to Chattanooga, and we were able to go back and see him, and to see, literally 24 hours before this young man ready to take on the world, and then him to be hooked up to every tube in the world in trauma ICU, having survived the fall that was unsurvivable, between 50 and 60 feet off a cliff. So they confirmed that Bradley had suffered a severe brain injury. He had 3 parts of his brain that were bleeding when they came in and did the initial CAT scan. The MRI confirmed that he had a diffuse axonal injury, which means that basically the damage is all over his brain, and these neurons have stretched and snapped. And we found out that 90% of those that have a severe brain injury, 90% of those with this diffuse axonal injury don't survive 24 hours. Well, we had survived 24 hours, and then of those, only 10% survive, and only less than 1% actually ever do more than get out of bed. That night when Bradley fell, the only explanation that I can give, after listening to all of the doctors and all of them telling us that at times that we should just prepare ourselves because he's not going to be able to survive these injuries, was that God, in that moment, he intervened at that point and sent his army of angels to come down and to take out of the very, very worst circumstance and make it the best.
That night in the room, and things changed. It was like a light came on in that room during that healing service, and he was not in good shape at all before the service. He had a bad brainstorm. But the best was when our friends who had been at the healing service here at the church would start texting the pictures of his chapel being so full, and people outside, and even in the parking lot. And you felt those prayers. And at that time, I understood what it meant to stand in the gap for someone, that there was such a complete wholeness around Bradley, and that we were going to make it. There was no turning back. We were going to make it.
I was in the post-traumatic amnesia as less of like a blackout and more of like a brownout. I remember opening my eyes one day in Chattanooga. Don't remember many details, but I saw like parents, grandparents, like all these nurses, and I'm like thinking to myself, what the heck happened?
There'd been several falls off this trail, and Bradley had the worst injuries, but he was the only one that made it. So we just felt God's hand in everything. We had watched, I had too many Lifetime channels where the person's in a coma, they hear their mother's voice, they respond, they remember everything, mother, father, I'm so glad to see you. Well, it's so not like that in real life. That was so not our experience.
And you have to realize that after those several weeks in a coma, we were in Chattanooga for just over a month. And then almost 2 months before they actually medically said he was aware of his environment. He would know his name, where he was, the date, who we were. So it was not something, as Pat said, coming out of a coma is slow and arduous, and the injuries that happen. So it was more than 2 months before he actually was aware medically of who he was and where he was. And not really what had happened, but that something terrible had happened. But prayer got him to that point and continues to bless this family and him.
But a lot of the things I think I can do take for a long time, and have taken a long time and still is. But I see it in the results. The proof is in the pudding. I'm back at university. I'm going to actually up the ante a bit and take 2 courses this coming fall. So that's where I see God.
We have 2 sons. We have William, who's 2.5 years younger than Bradley. William was a senior when this happened. Not only did the church pray for Bradley, but this church embraced William. And the healing service that night meant the world to him. His place at church, the church truly was his family when we were not here.
William's just been a great trooper and really understanding, and that I will never be able to thank him enough. He shows his love to me in different ways, like in how protective he is over me. He would not, as though he's now the older brother, he won't allow anything bad to happen to me. My brother took me to the orientation at University of Houston, get my things like the student ID and all that. And he was taking pictures of me. And he said to my parents that he was more excited that I was going to college than he was when he was going to orientation at University of Texas. And wow, I'm just like, wow. And the reason why I'm not crying is because I've not been able to cry. A lot of the emotions, especially strong emotions, have been dulled, especially by the injury. But I really want to.
I think we met Mike Endicott, what was it, 6 years ago? Something about like that?
I believe so.
Mike's teaching, particularly the one that said, his parents, we had total authority over him. And so to pray with that authority. And so we prayed with the intensity that Mike taught us to, and to put our prayers out there, and to, that God is right there, and it's a conversation, and that he hears every one of our prayers. And he may not answer them like we want him to, but he answers them in the best possible way.
Mike gave us and taught us about the power of prayer and healing. And that healing and that prayer worked.
I only go big or go home with my miracles. That's my story, and enjoy your evening with Mike Endicott.